guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be my next episode of Eye It or Buy It. This is the series where I look at new or recent eyeshadow palette releases. Sometimes I talk about other things like lip gloss or liner, but it's pretty much always eyeshadow palettes because that's what I'm really into. So basically, I tell you what I think of them, and then in the comments below, you tell me what you think of them. I filmed this eye look. I'll link it down below in the description box if you're interested. And if you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I love to play with colorful eyeshadow, and I upload at least 3 videos a week right now. Lots of colorful eyeshadow content. So if you're interested in coloring out your feed a little bit, then I hope you will consider liking and subscribing. And without further ado, let's talk about eyeshadow. First palette that I want to talk about is from Cosmic Brushes, and this is the Serenity palette. First off, I want to say that I love the outer packaging. It's kind of Aurora Borealis sort of feeling, and it's really, really beautiful. It's almost opalescent without the white, so I think that's really lovely. But let's talk about the eyeshadows on the inside. I think that this is a very interesting color scheme. We've got some cool tones and a couple of warm tones. The warm tones are more like these strange grungy greens, but then we have a lot of other greens. We've got a minty green, sort of a bright yellowy lime green kind of shade. Then there's like a deeper teal sort of green. We've got a selection of blues from periwinkle all the way to navy, and then there are pops of yellow, orange, purple. It's a weird color story, but I think it's cool. It's interesting, and if you really like colorful eyeshadow, I think that this could be a really wonderful palette to have some safer tones, you know, a light blue, light green, sort of a safe orange and a purple tone, but then you can go really, really wild, or you could simply keep it safe and have more deepening shades for those colors. I think it's very pretty. I know this palette has already been kind of a sellout hit. I believe it's sold out totally. I think it's in stock right now as of when I'm filming. And honestly, if I could get my hands on it, I would be interested. I think that the top left corner is a multichrome. It looks kind of, that one does look opalescent with the white. And you've got a nice range of dark to light shimmers and mattes. It's a pretty cool palette. I think it's interesting. Sugar Drizzle has a new palette called the Sweet Dreams palette. Now, they recently launched the Man I Love Frogs palette, which was a big hit. Sold out, restocked, sold out again. I think it's being restocked again. It's a lot of fun, but now this is the Sugar Dreams palette. And again, all multi or duochromes, just a very, very high shine, super metallic palette. And it's really interesting. I love the extreme pop of green in the center and then the extreme pop of pink in the lower corner. And then above the green, there's a lovely blue. We've got a couple purpley tones, a couple like gold, pinky kinds of tones. There's a mauve shimmer. It's a really interesting palette. It's obviously an accent palette. You're not going to make a whole look using this because there are no mattes to work with. I mean, I suppose you could. Like, there are no rules. It's eyeshadow. It's makeup. Do whatever you want. I personally would not be able to make a look with this, but my eyeshadow preferences do not tend to wearing an all shimmer look. However, if you want those special shades, like if you have a lot of palettes and you just want some really singularly beautiful shades that can be added into any look, then Sugar Drizzle seems to be a great option. I tried to get the Man I Love Frogs palette, did not succeed because it sold out literally 2 minutes. And I was on the site when it launched. I actually set an alarm for that one, which is very uncharacteristic of me. And the Sugar Dreams palette, just as pretty. I really love that pop of green. So I think it's really beautiful. If I ever see palettes from Sugar Drizzle on these secondhand sites, I would probably try to pick them up as long as they were affordably priced. This one's really pretty. Now, I know that this is kind of older news. It has been a while since I did one of these videos, but I wanted to talk about the Morphe Up Till Dawn palette. I think that this one actually captured my attention. Again, with the pinks and greens, it seems to be a theme with the spring eyeshadow this year. I think that overall, this is one of Morphe's more interesting color stories. It's not a collab and it's not a billion shades of neutral. There are a lot of various shades of pinks and greens in here. We've got some oranges, some browns, some blues. It's just actually a really pretty color story. I think it's too big because this lower left quadrant is pretty much only pink and they all look pretty much the same. And honestly, Morphe is not my favorite brand when it comes to quality. At this point in the market, I think that there are other brands such as Colourpop and BH Cosmetics, they're coming back, such as those two brands which offer awesome quality for the same basic price point that Morphe offers, just better quality. So I don't really recommend Morphe in general. I have 2 of their brush sets. They're okay, they work, they're what I use every day, but they're not terribly soft or comfortable. They're a little bit scratchy and rough. And I have had a Morphe palette, which I didn't really care for. Again, it was okay, but compared to what I have now and the brands that are really launching excellent quality at economical prices, I don't think Morphe is keeping up. However, some people are diehard Morphe fans and they love the brand, and this is a pretty palette. I do like the color story. It's not for me, but it is nice. Unearthly Cosmetics has launched their All I Ever Wanted Volume 2 palette, which is full multi-chromes. This is again a very, very colorful palette, although this one's a lot grungier and deeper than the Sugar palette. It also has a lot more shades, but I love the variety of blues, greens, yellows, orange, a couple pinky, red sorts of things, some purple, some brown. It's a really pretty eyeshadow palette. Honorably Cosmetics is a brand that I haven't yet tried. This is a pretty palette, but I think it's probably a little too dark, and I say that because I have discovered that my preference in shimmers is more like light and mid-toned. I don't usually use a very dark shimmer unless I'm blending it out into like the outer corner, which is where I generally put my deeper shades. So a palette that's really heavy in medium to dark shimmers is probably not going to get a ton of use, even if they're gorgeous. It's just not really my own aesthetic. I think that this is beautiful. I know that so many people are super excited because they love Unearthly and they love multi-chromes. This is quite pretty. If you can get your hands on it and this is your thing, I would certainly recommend it because everything that I've heard about Unearthly is positive. So here's an eyeshadow palette that I'm actually kind of intrigued by. This is the Glymonatrix Nearly Natural palette. Now, I was interested in the Glymonatrix Nocturnal palette, which was really beautiful, deep, grungy, dramatic sort of palette. This is kind of the opposite of that. This one's much lighter or medium toned. It's much more neutral. It's got a handful of shimmers and a handful of mattes. I like that it goes medium to dark. There's nothing super light in here as far as mattes, although there are several very light shimmers. But I think that this is kind of a neutral palette with a twist. It's not only browns or mauves or pinks or tans or beige. It's not just that. It has some of those shades, but then it has some interesting shades too, like that sort of bluey silver on the end. And then in the middle, we have kind of a sage greenish sort of shimmer next to a deep murky olive green. And then we have kind of pinky shimmers and peachy shimmers and rosy shimmers. There's a deeper rose matte that would work nicely with several of these shimmers, and then you've got two deepening shades, and they are deepening shades, which is great because I hate it when a palette just has, you know, like a range of mid-tone shades and there's just nothing to deepen it out. Okay, I don't hate it, but that's my own preference. I think that this is a very pretty twist on a neutral palette. You can go very neutral, or you can bring in a little bit more color and make your look a bit more spicy and interesting. It's pretty. Let's talk about another high shine, super sparkle sort of palette. This is the Radioactive palette from Gourmand Girls. Again, very high shine, super pigmented, very metallic, highly well reviewed in general, the brand as a brand. And this is a color story which I personally find a little bit more appealing for my own tastes. It's blue and pink. The pink veers a little bit purple. It's a fabulous color combination always. I know it's been done to death, but this is a version of doing that same color story well and interesting, not the same as everyone else. We've got a little bit of green, a little bit of like a hot pink, almost neon kind of red leaning shade, which is quite interesting. And then we've got some purples and we've got some blues. But this palette, unlike the Unearthly palette, is more interesting to me because everything's a little bit lighter toned. With the exception of this super dark purple, this would be a special shade palette that I personally would be more inclined to own and reach for. I think that I would use every one of these shadows, and even the dark purple is not too dark to scare me off. I think it's a really, really pretty palette. If I could get my hands on this one, I would definitely be interested. Another neutral palette that's new on scene is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette. This one, again, I think is neutral with a twist. It's got some orange. It's got a very, very light lavender sort of color. It's got some pink, and then all the way on one end is kind of like a gray green sort of color. It's an interesting shade. And then there's sort of a silvery shimmer as well. I personally don't have any ABH palettes. I keep almost getting one, but then finding something else that I want instead. And I know a lot of people love their formula. I haven't tried it yet, but this I think is, again, a nice, interesting twist on neutral. It's not totally neutral. You can go a little more colorful if you want. If I had to choose between this one and the Glymonatrix, I would probably go for Glymonatrix instead because I like that that one has a couple more brighter tones, whereas even the bright tones within this palette are a little bit more muted, but I think it is a pretty palette and it's probably a great fit for neutral lovers who want to experiment or just dip their toes into some color. All right, so we're going to launch into the inevitable Colourpop palette, and I will finish off with kind of an older Colourpop release. Older. It's like 3 weeks old. But then we'll finish this out. The first palette I want to talk about is called In the Springs. As I'm filming, this palette was released yesterday, and I think it's really pretty. It's sort of a brighter version of the Glam Light Frosted Flakes palette, the blue and orange combination, which is kind of hard to do well, I think. But I know Glam Light's palette is a huge hit, and I think that this In the Springs palette is really pretty. It has light, medium, and dark shades. It has one really deep blue, which is perfect for deepening up any of the shadows of the palette. It's got a couple really light tones and then a bunch of shades in the medium range. The picture I'm seeing right now shows what looks to be 6 different orange shades, and then we've got like 2 aqua kinds of colors. I struggle with Colourpop's promotional photos because, and I'll show an example of this in a minute. I feel like you might see the palette in one photo and then the next photo is totally different. Like the saturation seems to change depending on what photo they post, and it's really distracting. I personally am not able to get a handle on a Colourpop release until I see a couple review videos, or I see it in person if I ever go to Ulta, which never happens. But the review videos or Instagram posts from independent people, in my opinion, are more realistic of the actual colors within the palettes. I don't feel that Colourpop always has the most natural representation of what the palette truly looks like. And again, I will show you an example of what I mean about, but I do like this color story in the Springs. I like that it's mainly light and mid-tone, very summery, very fun, very poolside, beachy sort of feel. And I think that they've done a good job choosing the oranges. I wonder if there are some, maybe a couple of these oranges are a little bit more peach in reality, which would be a nice complement to the rest of the shades in the palette. There's a brown if you want to go a little bit more grounded, and overall I think it's a really pretty palette. The collection also has some blushes and some liners and what looks like lippy things or shadow sticks, I don't know. It's a really pretty, very springy, summery kind of palette. I probably won't personally pick it up because I just bought Orange Sorbet from BH Cosmetics Sweet Shop series and I'm in love with that one. So I don't need more orange shadows in my collection. I just bought everything that I'll ever need, and this palette is so orange heavy, and I have other blues. I personally don't need it. I do think it's nice though. Another recent Colourpop release is the Sure Thing collection, and this one, again, I like a lot. It's really summery, really beachy, really cool and relaxed feeling. There are 4 quads, and I think that 3 of them are really beautiful. There's a peach quad, a berry quad, and an aqua quad. The 4th one is neutral, doesn't really interest me, but I really like those other 3 quads, and I don't want to be buying quads because the little palettes get lost in my collection. At this point, the smallest palettes I have are BH Cosmetics Birthstone series and minis from Untitled. Both of these palettes have 6 to 7 shadows in them, and I forget about them. So I definitely don't want to be bringing in quads or, heaven forbid, singles. But these are really pretty. They're such pretty color stories. I'm really tempted to get these if I find them on sale somewhere. I don't know. I think they're really nice. But again, do I have these shadows represented elsewhere in my collection? And I don't need everything. I have heard that the Colourpop quads are phenomenal quality. I don't understand quality discrepancies. Like, why can't you have the same great quality across the board? I don't get it. But these are really pretty. I really like them. The collection includes other things such as Jelly Much shadows, Super Shock highlighters, and Fresh Kiss glossy lip stain. Again, I'm mainly just interested in the palettes, and I think they're adorable. Okay, so this is a more recent release from Colourpop. This is the One and Done palette, and this one actually did capture my attention because I think that the really vibrant pink and really pigmented brown color story is a little bit unusual. It's not a neutral palette with a pop of pink, and it's not a muted pink and brown palette. This is, again, from what I've seen, a really vibrant palette. I really like the 2 shimmer pinks in the center. I like that there's a bubblegum pink that's lighter toned, and then there's more of a hot fuchsia sort of pink in the corner. We've got some browns to pair it with. We've got an interesting silver, which is like, I guess, the spurs on a saddle, and an interesting silver, which will work nicely with the pinks. We've got 3 different tones of brown on the bottom. We have medium, slightly darker medium, and then dark tone. And then in the top corner, we have a lighter brown. Then move over a little bit, there's this neutral shade, and then a very bright what looks like a white shimmer. And then there's like gold shimmer too. I think this palette's actually really interesting. It's not something that I need in my collection, but I do like it. And if it's good Colourpop quality and you like this color story, I say go for it. It's probably lovely. And then the final Colourpop palette I want to talk about is the one that's ancient. You know, it's 3 weeks old. This is the Gettin' Fresh Mega Palette. This is the one, I'm going to put up 2 pictures for you. 2 different pictures of the same palette, both from Colourpop. And you will see such a discrepancy in the eyeshadow shades themselves. In one picture, you've got these vibrant greens, pinks, browns, super deep blacks. And then in the other picture, everything is just washed out. The vibrant greens are now all the same light lime green shadow. There's like one pink. The ones that we thought were deeper pinks are actually more orangey reds. The browns in the bottom row, not at all as deep as they look in the first picture. And then because everything's washed out, all of these pretty mid-toned mattes are just really light skin tone mattes. And This is my frustration with Colourpop's pictures because you get two different stories. You never quite know what the palette really looks like until you see other outside sources sharing information about it. And then you're like, okay, I saw swatches from 6 different people and they all look the same. They might look different than Colourpop's pictures, but the other people's swatches look the same, so this is probably what the palette actually looks like. That is my frustration with Colourpop. I think that there's so much inconsistency in the photos that they share. It's like they take a picture and they amp up the saturation, and then they take another picture 2 days later and they turn down the saturation, and you get so much discrepancy within the actual shades. I never quite know what they're releasing. I have no interest in this palette, honestly. I don't really care for the mega palettes. I think they're too big, too many options, sometimes some redundancy. And this color story, I really like the greens, if they are the greens that were represented in the first palette, but not so much the washed out palette. But I have enough greens in my collection at this point. I don't need more. Okay, so there you go. That is my Eye It or Buy It video. I will add this to my playlist, and I'll card the playlist for you in case you want to see any other ones. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you liked the video. Remember to comment below what palettes you're interested in, what has grabbed your attention, and what you're pretty much going to pass on. I appreciate you watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more. And until I see you again, I hope you have a great day. Bye!
Rinse it off because I dropped it.
Ew, you rinsed it and put it back in your mouth?
Yeah, after I rinsed it.
Have fun.